Welcome back. So far, throughout our lessons, we have focused on individual parts of SQL. Where conditions, joins, aggregation queries, and so on. Now that we have discussed these concepts in detail, we are going to focus on putting everything together. So for the next few videos, we'll focus on joins, group bys, where conditions all together, and see how we can combine to write more advanced queries. The query that we're going to write is the following. Take all the movies from year 2000 and list the number of movies in each genre, the average rating of the movies broken down by genre, and in addition to average, also list the standard deviation of the ratings, the minimum and maximum value for the ratings, and also list the total number of movies for each genre. Now, before even start writing this query, we need to figure out what information we need and correspondingly what tables we need to write this query. Taking a look at what we want to get back, we need movie genres. Movie genres information is stored in the movie genres table, so this is definitely a table that we'll need. Taking a look at the requirements, we see that we also need the movies table because we want to compute aggregate values about the ratings of the movies, and we also want to limit the movies to come only from year 2000. This information is only in the movies table. So we're going to need movie genres and movies. Now, let's start writing our query. We'll start by adding the movies table, and we're going to put the restriction that movies need to come from year 2000. So we go and we write select star from movies M, where m.year is equal to 2000. We execute this query and you will see that we get back the movies from year 2000. Of course, this is not sufficient. We also want to get back the genres of these movies because this is how we are going to do our aggregation. So we go now to our query and we are going to add the table movie genres with an inner join. So we add in the from clause inner join movie genres g on g.movie ID is equal to m.id. And then we have, of course, the where m year is equal to 1000 and so on. Let's execute this query and you will see that we get back the same results, but now all the movies have the genres in an additional column. Now we have this join result. The next step now is to compute the group by genre and create the genre groups that we'll need to compute our aggregations. So we go to this query and after the where part, we add the group by clause. So we add group by g.genre at the bottom of the query. So at this point, the select star that we had on top stops working because we are doing a group by genre. Therefore, we can only have in the select part attributes that also appear in the group by clause. So we go in the select star and replace it with select g.genre. So we have now select g.genre on the top. Now we can start adding the list of aggregate functions that we need to compute. For example, we want to add the average rating for the movies that have this genre. So we add select g.genre, average m.rank as average underscore rating. We execute this query and we'll see now that we get back the average rating for each genre. As you can see, all the genres have a value for the average rating except for the adult genre, most probably because no movie has received any rating in the database. You will also see that the average rating has quite a few decimal points, so let's make the output a little bit more beautiful. I'm going to add a round function on the average, so I do round average m.rank, 2. I'm going to keep 2 decimal points as average rating. So we get now the results, and you'll see that the average now has only 2 decimal digits. Now let's try to add a few more additional aggregate functions. We can also compute using the rank attribute the standard deviation of the ratings, minimum and maximum ratings. So we add after the average round standard deviation of mrank, 2 as standard deviation rating, min m.rank as mean rating, comma, max m.rank as max rate. Notice at this point that the select clause tends to become rather long, so you'll see that it starts making sense to have each aggregate function in its own line purely for reasons of readability. It doesn't change anything in SQL, but it's much easier to read. So next part, we want to also add the number of movies in the genre and the number of rated movies for each genre. So the total number of movies is easy. We go in the select clause and add comma count star as number of movies. And we want to see also the number of rated movies, in other words, the movies where m.rank is not null. So we go and add this aggregate as well, comma count m.rank as rated movies. We execute and you'll see now the statistics for each of the genres, the average rating of the movies, the standard deviation, minimum and maximum rating, number of movies, number of rated movies, and so on. So as you can see in the results, we have 560 action movies from year 2000, 194 of them were rated with an average rating of 5.45, and we have a standard deviation of 1.64, minimum rating of 1.3, maximum 9.5. Similarly, you will see that the adult genre has 261 movies released in year 2000, but none of them was rated, so the corresponding numeric statistics like average, standard deviation, mean, and max, they are all null. And now if you want, you can modify the query that we have. You can eliminate, for example, the year 2000 restriction, so delete that part or comment it out, and you are going to get statistics about the movie genres in the full database. And you'll see that the average rating of the movies across all years, minimum and maximum values, and their standard deviation. You'll see, for example, that drama is the most popular genre in the database, and the least popular is film noir. And of course, if you want to order by any of the attributes, you can add an order by clause and rank the results the way that you want. Finally, if you really want to get fancy, we can even add another component in this query. And let's say that you want to have in the outcome of the query what percentage of the movies in its genre has been rated. We can actually do this calculation directly in the select part. So we can go at the end of the select part and add count m.rank. This is the number of rated movies divided by count star. And the result of this division, we can call it, for example, percentage underscore rated. And you can see that we do now a division of two aggregate functions, and we can see what percentage of the movies in this genre has been rated. You'll see, for example, that most genres have 30 to 40% of the movies rated. We have a few outliers. For example, only 1% of the adult movies have been rated in the database, and on the other side, we have 97% of the film noir movies have received rating. This is our first integrated query. We combined a join with a group by and even had a where condition. And we use a variety of aggregation functions for calculating different statistics from the database. I hope that you found this example useful for understanding how we put things together. We'll try a few more examples next time. Until then, play around and practice. See you next time.